All right, super excited. Thanks for that, Savannah. Lots of great people in the crowd. I see Kevin Meefer. That's exciting. What's up, Kevin? How you doing, pal? Lots of other great people here. So very excited you're here. And we're going to talk about democratizing your demo. How can like everyone in your organization be showing product? Because at the end of the day, products are hard to build and you really want to showcase them. But before we dive into the questions with Sam and Kim, we actually had a really interesting conversation before we started the webinar in the last few minutes. And there was a few things that came up, and I want to start there. So, Sam, you were telling me about an experience your mom recently had buying software. And I don't know if it's something that she regularly does, but tell me kind of what that experience was like for your mom.
Yeah. So hi, everyone. I'm Sam. My mom, she's in her mid 60s. She's an executive director at a university where she puts on events and gets speakers for older people to continue their lifelong learning. And she was in the market for software that would help her organize all of her members, kind of like a CRM, but for a very small nonprofit, I think 900 members. And so she called me and I said, Mom, you got to talk to these people. You got to tell them what you want, tell them what you need, tell them what problems you're trying to solve. And she went through about 5 sales calls with 5 different companies. And when I talked to her after the fact, she was frustrated. She never saw the product. She felt like the salespeople weren't listening to her problems and really weren't presenting a solution that would fit her. And she's not the most technical. She understands tech. She needs some help. And she said to me, Sam, what would have really helped if I would have seen the product? I would have been able to feel myself in it, see how my team could have used it and the solution. So I thought that was really great opener to start here. I know, Kim, you have a similar story with your mom too.
I do. It's kind of ironic. We just learned this today, but both of our moms work in the university system. Hers was more, she's in an administrative role, and she was purchasing software, a CRM actually as well, to manage and maintain all of their students in the organization. And it was interesting because her experience purchasing a CRM was they showed demos and they got to the product. But what they showed in the demo was so vastly beyond her level of experience because she's not in tech all day at all. And her apps she uses are like Microsoft Outlook and things like that. So, and WebEx and Teams as well. So when she went into this demo for CRM, she just had no idea what she was looking at. And it took about 12 months for them to actually make that purchase. Whereas if she had gotten to a place where a demo made sense to her and it maybe spoke to her and was relevant, she could have helped the team make that decision rather quickly. And she's part of a pretty big university system on the West Coast here. So it was something that extended beyond just her location. So, I think it kind of ties in nicely to what we're talking about here today in the way of how demos should be democratized and you should get to the point faster through product.
Absolutely. And if you have questions or you want to chime in, drop them in the Q&A. I'll make sure that they get queued up for Sam and Kim. But Kim, we were also talking about something else, and it ties into exactly what we just spoke about now, which is the buyer experience. And I think, I was a B2C seller my whole life. And the buying experience in B2C is so vastly different. Now, I will say that B2C is often a lot more sexy, right? We're talking about selling chicken wings or shoes. But how can we bring a more B2C approach to a B2B type demo?
Do you want to go first, Sam?
I'll start. I think make it fun. People buy from people. I know we've heard that before, but break down the official barriers. Have it be interactive. Don't talk too much. It's something I have to tell myself. Let the buyer talk. Let's hear what they have to say. The more they talk, the better. That's my advice. Let's break down the barriers. Let's get to the people part of selling first.
Yeah, I definitely think it's about putting yourself in the buyer's shoes. Take them into account when you're doing any type of demo, prepping for a demo, creating content for a demo. What does your buyer actually care about? And I think about it in such a small way at the get-go, not even about just products and software and the way that I work today and how I have to demo and sell software, but even to Nick's point of talking about B2C, consumer goods, it's as simple as thinking about buying a shoe, going to a store and being able to see the shoe, touch it, feel it. And, that's down the road. We're talking about trial if you're feeling it, but you get the gist, you get to see it to make your decision. Or even if you're online shopping, you see pictures to make your choice. But as a buyer, if I weren't able to see all of that and have it be relevant the purchase I'm trying to make, I'm going to be frustrated and not really want to move forward with that transaction. So it's the same with product and with software. I think making it relevant to the buyer and thinking about what their experience will be, plus making it fun, would make it be really successful.
Sam, what kind of reactions do you get from prospects when you actually show products sooner in the sales cycle?
First thing, more relevant questions. I always know a buyer is engaged when they're asking questions, and they ask questions more when I'm showing product, because what they're doing is I'm either giving a very relevant demo to them, which is personalized. So they are seeing their name and their words and their actions in my demo, or I'm telling stories as I'm going through a more generic demo. And because they are visualizing themselves, really seeing themselves using this platform in day to day, they are asking questions, engaging questions, not just what happens if I click this button, but how would I, some specific example of something very important to them. And what that does is it opens the door. It gives us the right to ask more questions. It gives us the right to drill in and ask more discovery questions. So that's where I'd start. First, it's questions. They're asking more questions. I know they're engaged. I see body movements, body language. Yes. That's a huge indicator. Even on Zoom, I'm looking at Kamara and Nick. I'm looking at you right now. I'm seeing you nod. I'm seeing you engage. That's giving me feedback that this is on the right track.
Video on. That's another.
If you tune out and look to another screen, I'm going to notice, and that's okay. Won't take it personally, but that's how I know that you're engaging.
So Kim, let me ask you, because Yao has a great question here, a few points, and they're really good. But one of the things that was brought up was complexity of technology. So how do you educate when you've got a really complex piece of technology? How do you handle that, Kim?
Yeah. So from a rep's point of view, I'm doing kind of the first line demos. I'm doing those introduction calls where people don't really understand the platform. And to your point, if it's a very complex, large system, that there's so many different use cases and solutions you can provide with that solution, how do you demo that and maximize your time and still glean all that information that you need to get by way of discovery? I think about it in terms of making it smaller and having more finite ways of showcasing your product. And that also could start from knowing what the value propositions of your product are. So whether that is analytics as a segment, and I'm speaking to products I've sold in my past as well, where analytics is a big component. So I'll maybe start there and show analytics and then work my way backward and start asking questions, to Sam's point, questions. Those are the ways that you can get more information to then properly understand where you need to pivot to next within your product. But from a rep's point of view, it's still within reason. I'm not going to go in deep into all of these technical experiences that I would have someone like Sam come on board to help me with and drive that conversation around. But when we're thinking about how to make it make more sense and be relevant, you have to kind of slice and dice. You can't go in and just give a harbor tour, show the whole platform, and expect to really get anything valuable out of that. It's kind of a lost session in my point of view.
How do you handle it as a sales engineer, Sam? Put you on the spot.
Yeah.
While she's thinking of that, just a reminder, if you do have any questions, drop them in the chat. We'd love to hear what you want to know and how we can best answer those questions.
I think for technical questions, there's a time to answer questions on the spot. Mm-hmm. And then there's a time not to. So it's balancing what's going to, let me back up. Sometimes I like to answer questions with questions. If I don't understand the question, why would they ask that? Why are you asking that question? Maybe in a more friendly way. We're really understanding the second why. I call it the second why. It's one level deeper than the question they asked. It's why are they asking the question? It's probably related to a problem they have that wasn't obvious in the first statement of the question. So I can't, let me think of an example. The question might be, where do I find my customers? A list of customers. And I can say, oh, here's where you find your list of customers. Did we gain anything? Not really. But it could have been more interesting if I asked, why is this important to you after showing? To really I call it the second level. The second level question is a little bit deeper to understand the second why they're asking.
So we're going to be focusing on democratizing your demos through the rest of the session. But one of the things I want to talk about, because I think it is so relevant, is the sales engineer AE relationship. So Kim, to you first, how do you handle that as an AE when you have a new SE that you're starting to work with? How do you set a North Star so that you're both on the same page?
Prep. I mean, we meet, we prep, we communicate. I think communication is key. In this world we're living in today, we're remote. I'm remote all the time. Sam and I live in different states. But when we work together, we take the time to meet, to get to know one another as well. It's not just about what the deal is, what the opportunity is, what you're working on this call and that subject matter. Because of course that needs to be provided. She needs to be prepped when she's coming in new, especially if she's new to the organization. But when I'm thinking about communication and style and working habits, it's also getting to know someone as a human being and as a person. That kind of resonates with me too, because when I sell, when I'm showing product and demoing with clients, it's to people. People buy from people and it's a human connection. So getting to know your sales engineer and understanding how they think about things, because Sam and I worked together and we got to know each other. I'm very forward and direct. Sam is kind of the kind of person who, just like she just said, will ask a question and get to that second level, which is very different. But if I know that's how she operates and that's how her motion is, it's so easy for me to take a pause and not try to fill that silence, which I see a lot of reps doing when they don't really have that relationship with an SE. But it's time. You got to give that time and communication.
So how do you expedite that time from an SE point of view, Sam?
The way I like to work is I like to meet before and after a call with a client. Before, we can do all of our prep work separately. We can work independently, but before the call, I want to be on the same page with my rep. Usually, I like to do it over Zoom. Let's Zoom 5 minutes. Will not take a lot of time for either of us, and let's understand what we want to get out of the call. What are things we need to ask during the call to get to that next stage? And then after, even more important, is debriefing. It's, did we accomplish what we said we were going to do? If not, how do we get there? And what do we need to follow up on right away? Because the faster we do that, the faster we get to the next step.
So Sam, I'm sorry, go ahead, please.
No, I was going to ask, go to a Q&A question that I really like.
Oh, okay,
I know,
great.
me too.
I love it.
I like it too.
Yeah. Kevin asked, how do you create an impactful demo if you've had little or worse, no discovery?
Okay. Sam, over to you.
Demo discovery or disco demo, right? We've heard that word before. Can we do it in one call? When I hear the word demo, when people hear the word demo, what does that mean? It can mean 30 minutes in product, really digging into their specific use cases. It could mean 15 minutes of maybe a short blip of 5 different products and how they work together. Or it could be as simple as 2 screens. You're showing 2 screens. And by refactoring how we think about demos, there are different types. There are different lengths. There are 4 different audiences. There are 4 different times. So if we think of that first stage where you don't know anything about the customer, can I open a screen and pause and start to ask questions without showing anything? Can I give them something and get something? And Kim, I'm curious what your answer is, because I think you're in this seat a little more than I am.
Yeah, it's interesting. This ties in nicely to Sasha's question about agendas at the beginning of a demo meeting and kind of getting stuck in a certain place based on what you're saying your call should be about. But I think that you have to have flexibility because you really don't know where the conversation is going to take you. So to that point that you just made, you need to have the ability to have different types of demos that serve different purposes and different audiences. And that takes research before your call, knowing who you're speaking to. But again, you have to have the flexibility even in an agenda. So it's a simple agenda that I would ever use as an account executive that takes less than a minute to show before you go into your call. Because the whole idea of the call is, hey, this is what we want to cover today, but it's an open format. So please ask questions. Let's make it engaging and change it up if it doesn't actually hit home with what the conversation ends up being.
And I love that question, Sasha. And just to double down on it, what Sasha asked was, how important is it to put an agenda at the beginning of a demo? Because can that mess up the flow? And I think the best way to think about it is having an agenda gives you a North Star. And then one of the first things I like to do is, if I have different stakeholders, maybe on this new demo, is just gauge the audience and see what they want to talk about. So I don't think you need to feel restricted to the agenda. I think it just gives you a jumping off point to have the conversation. What do you think about that, Sam?
I agree, 100%.
Okay, so that was easy. So there you go, Sasha. Hopefully that was
Sorry,
helpful.
no comment.
Yeah,
No, that was easy. That was easy.
yes, disco demo too. I like that. You have to ask questions in order to show relevant content because you're not going to know, even with research, you're not going to know right out of the gates what to show. But to your point, Sam, and I've done this too myself, sometimes I'll have one page up of my application that I'm demoing and it's the home page. We're not even doing anything fancy, but they're asking me questions and it's just this idea of, oh, they're giving me a taste of the product. Let me give them more information based on the questions that the sales rep is asking and what the client is asking me in return. So before you know it, you're 30 minutes into the call, you're at the end of your 30-minute session. You haven't really done a demo, but they're so excited. They've got more education. You have more of a feel for what they're looking for and what they're trying to solve. And then your next step is another demo that's way more tailored that you could either give or bring in an SE for if that is the motion you're trying to have at your organization.
I love that. So, Sam, you and I often talk about, how to build an internal champion. So if I'm a sales engineer and I want to build a great relationship and build a champion with my AE, what are some of your best tips on doing that?
I find that certain AEs will gravitate towards the technical or will gravitate towards, I want to know this product because that's how I work best. I feel better when I know the product. At least that's my perspective. And I've met a lot of AEs that feel that way. And I think finding an AE champion, if you're looking to have your AEs demo, finding an AE champion that believes in it as well, that is committed to it, that understands it, has their own style, have them be your champion. And what that means to be a champion is they're going to help onboard and enable other AEs to harness that demo. And when doctors when doctors are learning a new system, a new EMR, they get trained by doctors. They don't get trained by a trainer who's not a doctor. And the reason why is because when you see someone in your position being able to teach you and give you tricks and understand your pain because they are in that same position, it can resonate much better with AEs. It's almost like an AE selling to an AE that you should try demoing. And because they can relate to them, it's going to hit home a lot more. So I like to find that AE champion, understand what gets them excited. If you're passionate about a product, when you're demoing it, it's going to come through in your voice, it's going to come through in your facial expressions, and it's going to come through in your general energy. So find that AE champion and have them be your advocate to your stakeholders, to other AEs to really start. I think the first step is to start. You won't know until you try.
I love that. And Kayla Green, you had a great question, but it's a little bit off topic. But if you want to ping me on LinkedIn, I will happily answer that for you. I can help you with that. So we're talking about democratizing demos today. And I think one of the things that's really interesting, Kim, you and I talk about this a lot, is how do you get actually internal buy-in from the stakeholders who need to bless everyone doing demos on your team? Because it sounds good, but no. Only my SEs can demo, or my AEs can only run with very tight guidelines on. So if I really want to democratize my demo and I really want to have my whole team showing product, because I firmly believe the more product you show to the more prospects, the more wins you're going to get. How do I start? What is my plan for getting buy-in above to truly democratize the experience?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there. When I'm talking to stakeholders, it's about the revenue potential. If we're talking about getting product in the hands of sellers to showcase earlier, it means more money. Yao also said the exact same thing in the channel, a couple more people too. It makes sense, it resonates, but it's not enough is what I've discovered throughout my sales career. It's not enough saying, oh, you have the potential of ROI. You have the potential to have this much revenue. I think getting to the why faster is really important. And you have to also talk about the cost. How is this going to impact you on the cost side? That has been super successful for me because revenue is great, but it's super unpredictable. But cost is a lot more predictable because if you think about it in the way of an SE, a full-time employee SE needs to be hired to support account executives to do demos. First of all, that's kind of undermining the talent there, in my personal opinion, because they're sitting there doing a demo where they could be going way deeper and more technical later on in a sales cycle. So now you've got two full-time employees there, an AE. You also have SDRs, BDRs in the mix. Plus now SEs coming in to do demos, which in my mind doesn't really make sense. That's a lot of headcount and a lot of cost associated with showing product. So in my personal opinion, I think going out with that type of talk track to a stakeholder gets so much more buy-in from them because they start to think about it as in, okay, if I then get my team on board and have the right demo for an account executive to show, and that's another component too, is education. An AE is not going, maybe the best AE, yes, I can't speak for everyone, but an AE is not necessarily supposed to be giving an SE level demo. There's different roles for a reason. I would never do the demo that Sam does, even if I could. But, different voices, that kind of thing. So there has to be this level of understanding and education that this is a completely different motion. We're moving away from the legacy view of discovery, then demo, and have more people involved in the process into this new age of we're modernizing it and having demos and product be shown sooner. So with that, you need to decide what are you showing in the product and then assign that to AEs respectively and have them be able to showcase it. But again, it comes back to cost and revenue at the end of the day. You just have to do a little bit more, I would say, in terms of education.
So I'm going to tie in my next question to something that Kevin's asking. So let's say we do get buy-in from the top and we're ready to democratize our demos across our sales organization. Sam, how do you, and this is Kevin's question, what are the best ways to enable salespeople who aren't comfortable leading a demo? I'll go a step further. How do you basically train now? Because you're the one doing demos all day. How do you train the rest of your team to give really compelling demos?
Mm-hmm. Great question. The first piece of advice I received from one of my managers during my first demo was, Sam, you're teaching someone how to use the software. We're not teaching. The demo is not teaching someone how to use something. There's no value statements. Instead, I needed to be focusing on telling them why and what value they'll get to it. So a good trick I've learned is start with the end first. Start with the valuable thing first, and then go back and show how you got there. And so when I'm maybe teaching an AE how to start, let's pick a small vignette. This is our key differentiator. Let's find this guardrailed. I think of a bowling alley with bumpers. That's how I think about these types of demos. You can't get off track. You're going to hit a pin no matter what. And this is a core differentiator. Now let's start with the end first. Let's start with that value statement. And then let's work back to how we got there. I think knowing that we're going for value and we want to start with the wow right away, and we're not teaching, is some of the best advice that I was ever given when I started.
I love that. Kim, is there anything you want to add to that? Because I really enjoyed that, but I want to hear what you got to say about that.
Don't train AEs how to give a product demo using slides, please. That's the worst.
It's funny because it's true.
It's true. I mean, I've had so many trainings where they show me through slides, and my first question is, can you show me in the product? And then exactly to Sam's point, they don't go to the value prop first or the reason why this matters and how you got there. It's let me click this button, this button, this button. So then on my very first sales demo, when I actually did a demo, this was years ago, but I'm going in and doing the exact same clicks, and lo and behold, the product changed. So the clicks didn't work in the same way, and then I'm stuck. So that's another way to think about it too. And I would also go back to what Sam said previously of having people in seat actually help with that type of training too. So not necessarily only having an SE do that enablement or sales enablement teams do that enablement, maybe bringing in another one like your AE champion perhaps to help with that conversation. Because there's also a little bit of lingo differentials there where you're going to get an AE talking a bit differently during a demo.
So to that point, Sam, when you're typically going through a full buyer journey, typically you're giving multiple demos to the same client or the same company. Is that right?
Correct. Yep.
So is that something you can also, with guardrails, start training the rest of the sales team on? Yes,
absolutely. Why not? I mean, we're not trying to make AEs SEs, but we're trying to democratize the demos. This is a team sport. The more people that play, the better we're going to be. I don't want to gatekeep demos just because I think I'm the only one that can do it, because it's not true. So as far as training AEs on different steps, is starting small. Start with that bowling alley bumpers. Start with that one key differentiator. Find success in your AEs. Once they feel comfortable, once they feel powerful giving these demos, hitting that differentiators and that value statements, then move on to the others. And what you'll find is eventually you'll have this library of assets that AEs will be able to choose from, pick from, and really be dynamic, be able to pivot whenever. And I think that's the dream. The dream is to be able to pivot depending on the use case, depending on the customer or the buyer you're talking to. So I think starting small is always the key. Start small, find that value, and then grow from there.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. And, Sasha was asking quickly, and this is a bit of a rabbit hole, but real quick, Kim, she was talking about going through recording. So using conversation intelligence for training. I am a massive fan. I think that most sales leaders I talk to don't spend enough time actually going through recordings with their AEs, never mind their SEs. So how do you approach that, Kim? If you're coming in as a new sales leader today, and let's say you're also running the pre-sales organization, how are you going to approach that from a conversation intelligence point of view?
Yeah, so we have a lot of technology in play today that does all of these things. So if you have it, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. Definitely leverage recordings, because not only can you better understand how to pitch your product in a human way where it makes sense and you're not just going through slides or reading a script, it allows you to also understand what works and what doesn't. So I would look for, intro calls to start, because that's something where you're just getting an overview. It's kind of getting your feet wet with the product you're going to eventually sell. But I would then also move into some of those more technical calls, maybe different segments as well, looking at different reps types of recordings and their conversation analytics around mid-market versus enterprise versus SMB, because there's different talk tracks. But the other way I'd also take this is I would listen to calls and recordings and look at the conversation analytics where there's competition involved, because I also want to understand how are we differentiating from competitors when speaking to clients. And that's the stuff that I would use in conjunction with standard training and role plays. While role plays are antiquated, a lot of people do not like this. I'm a fan of it because it's kind of jarring, when you come into a company as a new rep, being put on the spot by a panel or management, whoever it might be as your audience, and being forced to pitch your product and do it as you would on a call. It's nerve-wracking. Even though I've done this for years, I get nervous doing that kind of thing. I think it's necessary because that feeling of nerves will only dissipate as you do it more and more, and you're never going to be as judged as you are going to be by your leaders. So that's one of the things I would still do.
I love that. And Sam, I'm gonna volley that to you, but real quick, Yao brought up a point of, listen, I can't record my demos anymore. So I once had a client who was in the fintech space, and for security reasons, they didn't want to record the calls, even though we had a conversation intelligence tool. So I just took my iPhone, propped it up, and I would record myself. And I think this is really important. I always taught every seller who was under me, if you're an individual contributor, I really think this is a key point. I always taught every seller under me to, as much as I felt I was a really great trainer or a strong trainer, don't count on me to train you. You need to watch your own video. You need to watch your own tapes, because as a sales leader, I have a lot of different priorities, and training and enablement might not be top of mind all the time. So I would train my people to watch their recordings, take notes, pay attention. So watch your tape. I cannot stress that enough. If you have any questions, drop them in the chat. But Sam, back to you quick on that point. How do you use conversation intelligence as an SE?
We use a specific one here at DemoStack, and I didn't have it at my last company. When I started using it changed. Yeah. It changed my life. It did. I didn't realize how much. Well, I did realize, but I could never capture how much I can learn using a tool like that. That I can sort through calls. I can speed it up. I can search. I can tag. I can do so much as an SE without watching 50-hour-long calls, right? I don't have time for that. We don't have time for that.
But I think another great way to do it too is what I'll do is I'll go through our organization's conversation intelligence tool, and I'll just start looking up, wow, how did you do that? Oh, that's a really cool feature. That's interesting. Terms of reaction that prospects are actually watching, and they're like, oh, wow, that was interesting. Because if it was interesting to one prospect, it might very well be interesting to another prospect as well. So there is so much in those conversation analytics tools. So spend some time in there, mess around with it a bit, use the search and see what's possible. I'm a big fan of that. I don't know. I'll get off my soapbox now. So, all right, keep flowing with democratizing your demo. So Kim, what are some of the things that you want to make sure, again, you have buy-in from the top, you're now training the whole organization how to give demos on your team. What are some of the key things that need to be in every single demo?
In every single demo, there needs to be a why. I think we've said this throughout this whole session today, but there's a why are we here kind of mentality that needs to be weaved in throughout that entire conversation, because nobody wants to just get on a call and just talk for the sake of talking. We only have so many hours in a day. And that's something I keep in the back of my mind, no matter what stage I'm in a deal, no matter who I'm speaking to on the phone. They likely have something more going on in their life that is going to supersede me and my little product demo. So I need to give them a reason to be there, and the why. And the why is not, this is going to make money for me, this is great for DemoStack. The why is, why should this matter to them? Why does this thing in my demo matter? So it doesn't really matter, in my point of view, what I'm showing in the demo if it's not relevant to the person I'm speaking to. So it could be the dashboard, it could be analytics, it could be the full platform. But if there's no why tied to it, they're not going to care, and they're probably not going to remember after they leave the call. So why we are here is a big thing, but I need to understand from a client, why does it matter to them and what are they looking to solve? So the biggest thing for me is getting into what their challenges are and what they're doing today that needs a change. And why does it need a change? Because it's not always tied to what we might think it's tied to. It might be something totally different, which would help your deal go in a different direction. And so doing that discovery organically while you have your product up has been very successful for me. But why? That's the biggest thing.
I love that. What about you, Sam? Are there any things you absolutely must critically have in every demo other than the why?
I'm going to go deeper on why.
Okay.
Classic.
I like that you doing that. I like that.
I like why change? Why now? What's the compelling event? Why do you need it? And then the so what?
Yes.
The person in the chat, gold star. That's what we were missing here. It's the so what? Why does it matter? That is bringing it full circle. You understand why they need to change because you understand their problems and the challenges. You understand why now. What's the urgency? What's the compelling event? And then you can hit them with the so what? This is why it matters. And you can tie it back to their challenges. You no longer have this clunky workflow. You're saving time. You're saving money. And you're pulling it together. You're realizing ROI on that same call. You're pulling it together, and you can even pull it from the customer. How would having this, save you time? How would having this save you money? Depending on the challenges they're facing, ask the question. How do you see yourself? How would this change your day to day?
Find those pain points and just strike that chord.
A little bit of personalization also, I think, is necessary in demos. And Yao kind of said that with customization there on the chat. But I think that also hits home because a lot of companies that do have demos early on in sales cycles do a cookie cutter demo with a lot of dummy data. And that also could really fall flat. So when you think about customization, personalization is something really important. So that same person I was talking about that might have 10 other things going on and doesn't really care about my demo, if I simply have their name or their picture or something like that that's relevant in my demo, it's like night and day difference. They will all of a sudden look at the screen and be like, oh, that's so cool. It's as rudimentary as that, but I think that goes a long way.
I love that. And I think one of the things too, especially as we talk about having an entire organization start demoing, Kim, is that so often as sellers, we make ourselves the hero of the story. And I think when you put someone on the rails to start doing demos, they really think it has to be about features and benefits and us and what our solution is and how we solve your problem. But the reality is what the prospect wants is it to be about them. So how do you teach people to keep the focus on making the prospect the hero of the story?
I would say this is a top-down thing. I think as a company, we need to be customer-centric, and it needs to come from leadership in all of their actions that then makes the rest of the company kind of go in that way. But when we're talking about product demos, if we're trying to build product demos that make sense for people on the sales floor to be providing in lieu of an SE coming into an introductory demo, it's putting the customer first in the way of, hey, we took a look at your company with that research that you've done. We know that you do this. Maybe relevant details about other clients you have in the same industry that are using you today. Talking more apples to apples will get you a lot further because you may not be talking directly about that client, but you're comparing against something else that's similar. Or alternatively, you could even say a competitor. We're working with a competitor in a different industry and they use us for X, Y, and Z. And it kind of puts the onus on a different party. It's either your customer or another customer, and it's not about you anymore. And that goes a long way.
Love that. Sam, I'm going to get to you on that same question, but really quickly, if you're finding this relevant, all we do here, a lot of what I do here is making content for this space exactly, and it's on the DemoStack LinkedIn page. I just dropped a link in the chat. Make sure you're following us on DemoStack. But Sam, over to you. Same thing. How do you make sure that everyone in the team is making the prospect the hero of the story?
I love Kim's answer. I think a lot of it is being on the same page with the folks at your org that are on the call. Like, do we have the same goals? Do we understand who's on the call? And a lot of that is provided to me by my AE. Like, who's this person? They're the CTO. What do they care about? A lot of it's that internal prep. I loved Kim's answer about relevance and bringing in other ideas, other customer stories, competitor stories. The best way to get to that information is watching other people, watching other calls, shadowing. That's where I learned my case studies. That's where I learned what other customers are asking, what similar customers are asking. So if I'm in a similar industry, I might look at a call that my SE friend did a couple weeks ago to see how that went, to really put myself in their shoes, to put myself in their position. I want to feel their pain. I want to feel it so I can relate to it. So I can empathize with it.
So what happens when you don't have a tool and you're demoing out of a clunky sandbox that's always changing? What's that like as an AE, Kim? Like when you go to click on something and suddenly the link doesn't work anymore?
Well, I have a lot of years of experience, so I can pivot, but that's happened to me in an early day call, and it's a bit of panic. So I think that's where, with this whole modernization of demoing and democratizing it for reps and even SDRs, BDRs to show, you need to have guardrails so that you kind of mitigate that risk of clicking something that doesn't work. But you can't get away from it if an application changes. I mean, I don't want to plug DemoStack too heavily, but that's really why we're here, so that we can help with those type of solutions. But I would say, other than just things not working, is having a solid understanding of how you can verbally communicate your product and maybe go to the next best thing in the product to show that has kind of relevancy to what they're looking to solve for. So, if they are interested in metrics and analytics, but that analytics button doesn't go forward, maybe you want to take them into how do you build something and show how you get the analytics and metrics from there. And then you can always lean on some of those more legacy approaches and provide them documentation, maybe send them some leave behinds after the call. Maybe you even have a demo video that highlights the area you couldn't get to, or a cool live demo environment they can access and play around with based on your call. That's the kind of stuff I would send after the session. But I take ownership and I say, sorry, this happens. It's a demo. I don't think lying and trying to get around it really gets too far in this day and age, because people know when, it's not always an internet issue.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Okay. So Sam, how do you so much of doing a great demo is really telling a great story? And you're new to DemoStack, Sam, but we've talked a few times. I'm like, wow, you're such a great storyteller. What are some of the things that you really want to lay out in your story that you can use, but again, also can scale throughout your sales organization?
Great question. I write my stories down. When I hear a good story, I write it down, because stories that relate to everyday people are going to hit home a lot better than something you create on the fly. So my bowling alley story about staying in your lane, I've used that one. I've tested out a river and instead of a bowling alley. Don't like that as much. So it's really writing it down. And I think the key to demos is practice. It's practicing in the environment. If you're not practicing, you're going to run into an issue. When I practice, I test everything I'm going to show. I test it as I'm saying it, as I would with my pauses. And if I know that if I click that button, I'm going to get to a really bad screen that I don't want a prospect to see, I don't click that button. And the second thing is something's going to go wrong eventually. You're going to hit an error eventually. Number one, don't panic. And number two, have a backup plan. A backup plan can be as simple as a slide deck with a screenshot. Oh, this is what I was going to show. Brush it off. Client doesn't need to know you're frazzled. They don't need to know you're panicked. A lot of the time, they won't even notice. So don't panic. Take a breath. Maybe your AE notices something went wrong because you practiced together, and they can jump in and ask a question and keep the customer busy, essentially, while you're in the background changing your screen or swapping your tabs. This is a team sport. And the more you can be in tune with your team, the better you're going to perform when it's game time.
Yeah, I was just dropping tons of great stuff here in the comments. Is this Yao or is this Chat GTP that right now is kind of filling all this kind of data in? I love this.
I want to
But
save the chat.
I know the chat's great. Great questions. Yeah, appreciate you. But Kim, over to you. So storytelling is something you and I talk about every day. Let's talk about taking case. My favorite is case studies. When people are like, I don't know how to tell a great story. I don't know where to start with a great story. Let's just make it easy with case studies. You touched on that earlier, but let's circle back and really hammer that point home.
Case studies are huge because people want to know that what they're looking to buy and what they do eventually purchase works. And what better way to see that than from out in the field, wild, live. G2 apps like that, where you can actually go in and see reviews, those are awesome because they're not things that we as a company would put out. So those are great. I like sending links to those types of things. I like to direct people there. But case studies that even our company puts out are awesome. And a case study that has metrics in it with what was saved, what was solved for, how did we impact the organization, that really hits home. And what I've learned being an enterprise strategic seller is even in that space, they don't need to see a case study from another Fortune 100 or Fortune 5 company. They really don't care. If they can see a case study that matters, plus they can understand how it could be applied to their organization, that really does hit home. Case studies could be in the format of links you share, things on the website. You could even use references. I use a lot of references, especially in late stage deals with clients of my own that speak one-on-one very candidly with my buyer from another logo. Of course, I prep with them and make sure they understand what the other team is looking to solve for. So that's kind of that heavy-handed approach where you need to know what you're setting your clients up for when you help them to do these things for you. But I definitely think case studies are the way to go. And I even use them in my pricing decks, to be honest, because that's something that people want to see when it relates to money and what they're trying to spend on the tool as well.
I love that. Sam, looked like you were going to say something on that. Or are you good?
No, I'm good. I
Okay.
really like what you said. I like the metrics. I mean,
It's all about the data.
Yeah, all about that data.
Absolutely. That's why I got so excited about the conversation intelligence tools. Okay, so I want to talk about leave behinds, but before I do that, we are getting close to the end of this. If you have any questions, we would love to answer them for you. Anything about the demo, we're here for you, specifically democratizing, but we're up for whatever. But let's talk about leave behinds. So, okay, we've democratized the demo. We have buy-in from the top. We've got everyone ready and excited, and the whole team is now showing products sooner. So Sam, what are some key tips when it comes to leave behinds? Because that's really, I mean, that's the cherry on top. And I think leave behinds is underrated. I think people don't do a great job with it. So what are some of your best practices for leave behinds?
If you are able, send a leave behind that puts the customer in the system. Send a leave behind that lets the customer click themselves. I think the best type of leave behind is something you can feel and you can interact with. If you can't, video is okay, but you're going to really have that investment. You're going to have that feeling. If you send something they can click and interact with. Bonus points if it's personalized. That my number one, I want to click something. I want to try it myself. I want to log in. Number two, maybe it's a guided tour. Maybe it's more of a, here's how we use it. And there's text on the screen and I'm really being guided. So that's my number one is I want to feel it. Some people might be more comfortable in a more controlled setting though.
What about you, Kim? What are you really focused on with leave behinds?
I would say that's the best way to start, is very controlled. Because when I'm on a call and I'm showing someone or helping them, with them driving and I'm on the call, there's that level of control. But when we're not in that room and they go on and test it on their own and do things on their own, if they had a trial or an open-ended kind of access to the system, it becomes less about how it's going to solve challenges and problems. It becomes about UI and UX. People just click and then they don't really know, they kind of get away from the core value of the software itself. So I like that. Guardrails, maybe having some tool tips, things that are guiding you and educating you as you go along. So it's valuable. It's a good use of time clicking through and learning more about the platform. Maybe as a second level, sure, trials could be beneficial, but I don't always leverage trials in my deals to win, because I do think that when you get into a trial, it opens up a whole other can of worms that may not even be related to anything that they need the software or service for. So I'd start there.
I love that. And Yao, I don't know if you mentioned it or is your chat GPT bot that mentioned it, but you said don't discount. Yao, don't discount. If you told a compelling story and you really hit on those pain points, don't discount. Don't ever discount. All right. If anyone has any final questions, go ahead, drop them in. Otherwise, I'm happy to take any more we got. But real quick, Kim, I'm going to put you on the spot. I'm going to give you 30 seconds. Sell me DemoStack. Here we go. 3, 2, 1, go.
Sell me DemoStack. Well, you have to have DemoStack. If you really need a product that will help you showcase your product in a way that's stable, scalable, efficient, pretty, and relevant, that will be DemoStack. We have the ability for you to do demo leave behinds, customized, personalized, tailored live demos, plus also the ability to tailor your own product. If you don't want to copy your product and do what we call a clone, bringing your environment into DemoStack, you can actually do this on your own product as well and change things up. So it definitely gives you the ability to democratize your demo.
You get a standing ovation. Yeah, I would stand, but I'm on camera. All right. Well, last chance. Anyone have any last questions? 3, 2, 1. All right. Well, we really appreciate you joining us here on the Sales Hacker webinar. This was a lot of fun. And I appreciate all of you joining us today. Follow us on DemoStack, of course, on LinkedIn. If you have any questions about these, you can reach out to anyone on the team. Savannah, anything else?
Real quick, I just wanted to personally invite all of you folks to an event we've got going on next week on the 12th. We've got a live Ask Me Anything with Manny Medina. So if you've got any questions for him to kick off the new year, that's a great event to participate in. I'll drop the link to submit your questions there and sign up and save it to your calendar in the chat. But other than that, I think today's event was amazing. Thank you, Kim and Sam and Nick. As always, it's a pleasure having DemoStack, and we look forward to next time.